हाँ, मैं उनको टेक्स्ट करा था और बात नहीं हो सकी, तो जो है इंशाल्लाह मौलाना वर्जीनिया में है, माशाल्लाह से जो है पूरी फिर भी ये जूम के उससे कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं हम, और ये हर वक्त के लिए आपके यूट्यूब में जा रहा है और आपके कॉन्टैक्ट्स को और जो है आपके पहचानत वालों को ये तबलीग का बहुत ही अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म है, और इसका सवाब जो है आपको हर वक्त के लिए किसी जो लाते हैं लोगों को ये जगह पे। और हमारे नाना सैयद मोहम्मद अस्करी जाफरी जो ट्रांसलेशन शुरू करे थे, और उसके ऊपर ही जो है हम ये कायम करे थे जगह के नहजुल बलागा स्टडी ग्रुप। तो मौलाना इंशाल्लाह उस पे वो करेंगे। यूनुस, अगर टाइम है तो मौलाना खुद ही थोड़ा कुछ पढ़ दे सकते हैं उसमें, कुरान की आयत जो है ना आप।
जरूर, मैं शुरू कर सकता हूँ। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful. When comes to Allah, when comes the help of Allah along with victory, and you see people enter the religion of Allah in large groups, celebrate then the praises of your Lord and seek his protection. Verily he is oft returning in mercy. हमने सूरह नसर की ट्रांसलेशन तिलावत फरमाई। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला
यूनुस, मैं रेडी हूँ।
जी बिस्मिल्लाह। एक खसीदा, फिर उसके बाद मौलाना की स्पीच।
जी, और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत।
ये खसीदा बाद में है, पहले स्पीच तो दे दें, बाद में खसीदा पढ़े हम। मौलाना स्पीच शुरू करिए।
अच्छा,
खसीदे का
बहुत अच्छा बन जाएगा मुस्तफा साहब
जी।
जैसे हम करते हैं ना, सलाम होता है, फिर
ठीक है।
खसीदा पहले होना चाहिए मुस्तफा।
नहीं, जो हमारा जो सेटअप है ना, वो पहले मौलाना का ये पूरे इंटरनेशनल लोगों के लिए जो है कुरान का वो सेशन है नहजुल बलागा का, उसके बाद मौलाना खसीदा पढ़ेंगे, फिर छोटा सा जश्न है उसके बाद। ये हो गया बात। सुनिए आप कितने दिन से
अलीबाज भाई, would it be possible to recite qasida after the speech, please?
Yes, after the speech.
ठीक है भाई, मैं क्या कह सकता हूँ।
Thank you so very much for your understanding. Thank you. जी बिस्मिल्लाह।
जी मौलाना शुक्रिया।
चलो ठीक है, जैसे हुक्म हो। जाहिर है कि
जी शुक्रिया आप जी,
पता है तहजीब और तरीका क्या है।
लोग सुनते हैं मौलाना, पूरे आपके यूनिवर्सल इसका मैसेज है, तो उसके बाद खसीदा और जश्न का टाइम बाद में दे दिया।
तो मैं आखिरी फिर जो आखिर में इमाम आली मकाम पे गुफ्तगू हो जाएगी, शुरू में खुतबे से शुरू करते हैं फिर।
जी अच्छा,
ठीक, जैसे आप
जी।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يعصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووطد بالصخور ميدان أرضه أول الدين معرفته ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خير المبشرين والمنذرين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد.
Yunus Bhai, can you enable the share screen?
Should be good now, thank you.
Jazakallah. Okay, inshallah, I hope this screen is being shared.
We can see.
Assalamu alaikum, mu'mineen, mu'minat, dear viewers, listeners. We continue with our discussion on Sermon 91, Khutbatul Ashbah, which is the Sermon of the Skeletons. And we said that the sermon was started by Amir al-Mu'mineen, as-salatu was-salamu alayhi, when a questioner asked the question, can you describe Allah to us so that we can see him? And Amir al-Mu'mineen, then it is said that he gave this speech, this impassioned speech in which he wanted to show that one should not try to ask to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so even if it's trying to see Allah with our imagination, Amir al-Mu'mineen has discussed that that also is not possible over here. Last time we were talking about this last section here, I believe he is the last for whom there is no after, so that there can be no anything after him. And he is the first for whom there is no before. So this tells us that nothing is before him either. The idea of first and last, we call Allah awwalu wal akhiru, and that is a superlative degree. Like when we say Allahu Akbar, that is a superlative degree, and that tells us that Allah is the greatest above everything. So whenever we think of anything that has a beginning, or we think of anything at any time, we realize that Allah is before that. However, even the concept of before and last occurs when there are things that are in sequence. And it occurs when we're talking about time and space. And for Allah to be part of any sequence is not possible. So we do say he is awwalu wal akhiru. But if you recall, I believe last Sunday we had talked about the sun telling Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya awwalu, Ya akhiru. And that tells us that if the beginning is from the Nurul Masumin, then Allah is before that. So that's how far our mind goes. Awwalu ma khalaqallahu nuri, that hadith is where we go back to the beginning. And that beginning for us is the appearance of the Nur of the Masumin alayhi salam in the world. Therefore, when we look at that, we see that Allah is before that, but it's simply a superlative degree. It's not something that we can truly see or comprehend. And then we say, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ in Surah Al-Rahman. And that tells us that if everything is destroyed, Allah is saying the wajh rabbika will remain. He does not say I will remain. He says that the face of your Lord will remain. And that's interesting because he could have said that I will remain. But there is no concept of him not remaining because he was always and always will be. So remaining is something that is coming from that which did not exist before. Therefore, when we say everything will be destroyed but will remain the wajhu rabbika, the wajhu rabbika is the Masumin as-salatu was-salamu alayhi. So therefore we see that, again, the beginning is with them and the end is with them. So we are constrained in our modifying our understanding by limiting it to whom he is. And therefore, when we say we're limited by the understanding of what we know about the Masumin, therefore Allah is either before them and after them. He goes on to say that time does not, he prevents the pupils of the eyes from seeing him or perceiving him. So our sensory apparatus of vision is not such that it can possibly in any way see him. And this is an answer to the questioner, as if we could see him. And we said that is what Hazrat Musa was asked by Bani Israel as well, that we want to see the Lord. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran replies to Musa, Lan tarani, you can never see me. So therefore we know the five senses are limited. we know that they are only seeing that which is able to pass through a certain frequency range. Time does not change over him. And when we say time does not change over him, we understand that time changes everything, and everything that's in our known universe and created is undergoing in what physics we call entropy. And entropy is the law of the universe where we see everything slowly degrades. Everything slowly over time is becoming less and less. And this is the physical limitations of the world that Allah has put on it through his laws. So time is affecting everything, but time does not affect him. It does not change him. We are limited to time in all of our thoughts. Therefore, when we think about where we are, it is either in the present or we are thinking about the past or the future. All of these are because we are within a certain time frame, but Allah is outside of time. Therefore, that type of existence would allow one to see in Allah's way of seeing everything that's occurring at all times. Therefore, past, history, and future become something that are seen together. And this is something that we see manifested through the Masumin, so we come to understand it. We see the holiest Prophet ﷺ sitting on the mimbar in Medina, and he looks up and he says, Salaamu alaykum, salam upon you. But he's looking up not at the people whom he's speaking to. So the people whom he's speaking to ask, what are you looking at? And he says that I am seeing the ones who are to come, the future generations who will believe in me and my prophethood without ever having seen me. So therefore we see that the prophet is seeing the future. It's not like a prediction. It's not like, oh, maybe this will happen. It is simply seeing the future. We see Amirul Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi once looking towards the Kaaba and then saying, Subhanallah, what eloquence, what grace, what glory. And when they ask him, whom are you speaking of when you say this? He says, I am seeing my Qaim, my son, my 11th son, the Qaim, who will be standing upon the Kaaba, and he will be giving, and he is giving a speech. And as I hear his speech, I am complimenting him, I am praising him. So again, we are seeing the future. And that concept for one like me is impossible to truly understand because life is unfolding before me one step at a time. And what I am seeing is simply what is happening in this current moment. We do not see what's happening in the future. So the idea of seeing something unfolding before you that is going to happen later on is very, very difficult to comprehend. And therefore, how can we understand Allah whom time does not change over him and does not admit any change of condition about him? So we understand that it is not affecting him in any way, and he has complete control and authority over it. He is not in any place so as to allow him movement from one place to another. So one who exists out of time, how would one in time see him? Because I am seeing what is in the moment, and Allah is not just in this moment. He is outside of this moment. So therefore, again, limitation. He is not in any place so as to allow him movement from one place to another. And therefore, we understand that the idea of place, which we call in physics space, is the concept that there was something created, and in that space we can place matter. So the idea of space was created by Allah to create matter and place it in that space. Because I am limited and confined to that space, how will I truly see him who is outside of space? And because our limitation is that in space, we are located in one location at one time. I cannot be in two places at the same time because I am limited by these laws of time and space. Would it be possible for me to be in more than one place at one time? Well, it's possible for some people. We see that possible for Amirul Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi. Again, it shows us that it's because he himself is out of time and space, and the Masumin were present in the universe before Allah decided to create space. Indeed, when we see in the narration of Hadith Qissa, it says, إِنِّي مَا خَلَقْتُ سَمَاءً مَبْنِيَةً وَلَا أَرْضًا مَدْحِيًّا وَلَا قَمَرًا مُنِيرًا وَلَا شَمْسًا مُضِيًّا وَلَا فَلَكًا يَدُورُ وَلَا بَحْرًا يَجْرِي وَلَا فُلْكًا يَسْرِي And he said, he names in general everything in the universe. And then he says, إِلَّا فِي مَحَبَّتِي هَؤُلَاءِ الْخَمْسَةِ الَّذِينَ هُمْ تَحْتَ الْكِسَاءِ. He creates it out of love for those who are in the kisa. Now, if I'm going to do something out of love for somebody, then they have to exist. Because once they exist, then I will do what is being done out of love for them. Therefore, we see that the Masumin are the cause, or his hope for them is the cause, and therefore he creates the universe. So that tells us that they were present before time, space, and matter and material, which again shows us why Amirul Mu'mineen can be at 40 places at one time. So the idea of me placing myself in multiple locations in space is something that I am limited to and cannot perform. I would be able to do that if I was outside of time and space. For me, it is very difficult to understand even the existence that one would have in heaven, because in heaven it is said that things are eternal and that one will live here for eternity. The idea of eternity is therefore now not limited to time, and it's something that is continuously occurring. And in that eternity, there is no degradation of matter and material. So one is not getting older, things are not expiring, things are not slowly getting or losing their strength. So that kind of existence in Jannah, when I truly try to imagine it, I'm not able to. It's hard for me to see what it would be like to exist all the time. The maximum I can do is perhaps go back to a nice moment in my youth or childhood, where maybe there was a time in my life when everything was calm and relaxed and there were not burdens upon me and time seemed to be passing in a slow way. Everything I was taking for granted, and every day was just a nice, peaceful existence. That's all I can do. So I put that over there like a vacation. So people go on vacation, they disconnect themselves from their worries and stress, and they go to a relaxing place perhaps. And now time is passing in a different way, relatively speaking. So when we imagine Jannah, what we do is we project that vacation type, retired or relaxed type life and just extend it for eternity. But is that really what it's going to feel like? That is impossible to say until we are there. So then when we are there, we will be a step closer to maybe understanding or realizing how we cannot understand the eternal one. So time and space, Amirul Mu'mineen has mentioned here, if he gives away all the mines of the mountains that emit out gold, silver, pearls, and coral, which the shells of the ocean vomit out. The translation here is probably a bit, that word could have been changed. It would not affect his munificence, nor diminish the extent of what he has. He would still have such treasures of bounty as would not decrease by the demands of the creatures, because he is that generous being whom the beggings of beggars cannot make poor, nor the pertinacity of beseechers make miser. So in this section, we see that Amirul Mu'mineen is talking about an infinite treasure. And this infinite treasure, we say that no matter what Allah empties from his treasure, no matter what he gives, it never decreases, because he is the eternal power and source of all creation. So there's no limitation there. And that tells us that it is completely unlimited. In that situation, to create a universe when you have all authority and there is no limitation to what you can give, then to create a universe where everything is still in delicate balance, where there is still enough of everything so that all existence can survive, yet not enough of everything so that existence will end up perhaps inflated. If we look at the economy that is run by countries where they print their money and they push it out, that also, in a manner of speaking, is unlimited. Not really unlimited, but in the sense that a country could pump out as much cash as it wants, and we see countries doing that. But I'm not one of economics. Those who understand economics know that there's something called inflation. I just know the word and know that it means that the value of the currency goes down. What are the intricacies and the laws and the calculations that govern how much money will be printed is too complex for my limited knowledge. However, the delicate balance that is required shows us that it's not easy. And so for humans, and that's one thing, just one thing, the amount of money that will be printed and how it will be changed in its value shows us that when you are having control over how much you can put of something out, it is not very easy. And if we look at every particle in creation and every creature and every atom, every electron, everything that is found in our known universe and in the unknown universes, to put it into such a perfect balance that there is enough food for everybody, but not such that people lose the value of food, that there is enough of every resource around us. And those resources are such that they affect every part of our lives. So not going to all the examples, but you can understand that the delicate balance that is required there. And therefore, we see that nothing will ever diminish him because he can constantly create. But it is the idea of balance and harmony and perfection. And through that, allowing us to evolve and become spiritually evolved and to become a higher version of ourselves. This happens with a very delicate, intricate balance of how much is being given to whom. And he says to Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, when Hazrat Adam asked Allah, when he looked upon his offspring, and Hazrat Adam saw that the offspring that Allah showed him were not all equal in their various statuses like health, life, how long they will live, how much wealth they will accumulate, how many children they will have, how many illnesses they will have. And Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, from his perspective, says that, oh Allah, I see that there will be fights now among these people because there will be jealousies, because not everyone is equal. So the jealousy and the hasad becomes one of those things that is occurring because of this unequal distribution of all of the resources. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then goes on to say that, yes, Adam, that is how it is, but I know best which of my creations will come closer to me when they have more wealth, which of my creations will move away from me when they have more wealth, which of my creations will come towards me when they have less wealth, and which will move away when they have less wealth. And the same for sickness and health and all of the bounties and pleasures. So we sometimes live this life in a way that we are running after these bounties, always trying to accumulate them. At the same time, we find that we are limited because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also limited us in the gaining of them because he knows best, as he knows that it is not about gaining these blessings that Allah has created for us. Rather, it is about reaching a higher status for ourselves. But he is testing us and he wants us to do it so that we become a part of that creative process. So not only did he create us, but in another way, we are creating ourselves. We continue to create ourselves every day, every moment of the day. He gave us the building materials. He gave us everything we need. He gave us the sense of vision, the sense of hearing, the faculty of intellect, the body with the arms and limbs, so that we can continue to gain his blessings. At the same time, he gave us a nafs and a ruh, and he wants us to continue to build our own ruh. So as we continue to exercise and make this body healthier, we are also continuing to exercise to make our ruh stronger. And in that evolution, spiritual evolution, we gain nearness to him. And as we gain nearness to him, we realize that he is the most important, rather than the things that he has created for us. Those things created for us were a means to gain nearness to him, not something that we should be chasing after. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says the way of the world is such that the more you chase after it, the further it runs away from you. And the more you run away from it, the more it chases after you. So, of course, we need our nourishment and food and shelter and clothing, but we realize that these are just a means, and they are a means for us to understanding him to the extent that we are capable of doing so through our limited intellect. He would still have all these treasures as nothing is limited to him. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen goes on to continue, and the translator has put this section into attributes of Allah as described in the Holy Quran. Then look on, questioner, be confined to those of his attributes which the Quran has described as seek light from the effulgence of its guidance. Sometimes as children, we ask our elders and we ask them about questions about Allah. It is perfectly natural for those questions to arise because a thinking mind will have questions. And sometimes the parents of the young child, it often happens around puberty where the mind starts to mature. So bulughiyat is not just simply a matter of hormonal changes in the body and making one have a reproductive capacity. Rather, bulughiyat is about a maturing of the mind. And so therefore, as the mind matures as well, we see that now, that's why now Sharia becomes implemented upon the one who is baligh, upon the one who has reached a certain stage of maturity. And in that maturity, the child will ask the parents, and the child will say questions about Allah, which the parents will respond to by saying that do not ask these questions. These are not questions. We do not ask questions about Allah. So therefore, that is in many respects true, absolutely. On the other hand, we see that children sometimes then rebel against this, and they say, what does that mean? Why can I not ask questions? And so the balance that is needed is very important, especially in this day and age when atheism is on the rise and one is looking for an excuse to disregard the creator and anything. And the excuses are sometimes quite ridiculous. Yes, sometimes they have some merit to them, not really, but maybe something could be understood from them, but most of the time they're quite ridiculous. And so we see the atheist who says that, well, look at all these Muslims and how they're following Islam and look at what they're doing. That's not a reason to disregard your creator. That's a reason to realize that people are not following the religion. That's all. And there's many other excuses and reasons that are given. However, the balance that Amir al-Mu'mineen has presented here is very good. So therefore, when we are in that situation where children are asking these types of questions, this little section here is probably enough to satisfy or enough to begin thinking about. And therefore, what happens is questions need to be asked, but the questions are guided and the questions are directed towards certain things which we are capable of understanding. The weird thing is that when we don't understand things that are in front of us, we still believe them because we can see them with our five senses. So therefore, when we see that, for example, I don't know how a microwave works or how it emits the microwaves and how they are created within, yet I will use a microwave oven. And even if somebody comes along and, or I go to somebody and say that how does microwave work and they don't know, that doesn't mean I stop believing in the microwave or I stop, because I can evidence it with my five senses. But when we evidence things with our intellect, that's where abstract knowledge enters. And therefore, in those situations, it is possible that now we just disregard that which we do not understand. So we disregard Allah sometimes because we do not understand and we do not get the answers to those questions. We are often saying that in this day and age, we must answer the children's questions. This is a new generation. They need answers. Every generation needed answers. It's not like this generation is somehow far superior above other generations. It's not like, the IQ of humans has increased over each generation. The IQ the average has been the same. What's increased now is our level of understanding of many of the things that we can evidence. So the child today is not a superior being. I'm not trying to in any way demean the new generation or any generations that are to come. All I'm saying is that we should not demean previous generations and think that they were somehow ignorant. We say in the old days, the parents, generations ago, they just accepted whatever was said. They didn't question it. They moved on. And nowadays we have all these questions coming up. That in a sense is partially true. Perhaps if we counted the number of questions that were asked by 2 or 3 generations ago, like if we could go back in time, look at all of the teenagers and then count how many of them asked questions and how many questions there were. And then we came to today and looked at the teenagers and asked and saw how many questions were asked and averaged it out, perhaps it would be higher. And I think one of the reasons for that is the internet and the age of information, because we are able to, we have impatience now, because every question is answered immediately. Therefore, all we have to do is take out our phone and type in the question. And that was not something that was there before. So there was a certain amount of patience in previous generations when it came to questions. Many mysteries were not revealed yet through science. And therefore, the world around us was not properly understood. And that's why the number of questions were less, because there was a patience that came with not understanding many things. However, now much is being understood and everything is a question away. So what happens now is that we see when the question is not answered immediately, then we disregard it as false. But we have to realize, young ones, that the questions that are being answered to you are those which are found on the internet. So now really what's happened is, it's that now we have available to us the answers to almost every question that is being asked by over 6 billion human beings. That's a lot of information that is gathered together. That's collective humanity knowledge. Before, it was more individualized. We were limited. We did not have access to what everybody in the world is asking. So in that situation, yes, we could say there is more. But to say that this generation is, superior because of that, that's not the case. It's simply a matter of the times. If we want to look at change, we would have to say that probably the most change I think that any generation has seen would be the change that occurs, for example, in the generation that was born in the 40s, 50s. Because that generation, what we see is they went through the telephone that was like in 2 pieces, and then they went on to the telephone that was at home with 1 handle. Then they went on to the computer came around, the radio changed to television, the television changed to flat screen, colors came in and different technologies, and then the cell phone. And generations that were born in 40s and 50s saw all of that in their lifetime, and they adapted to each one they were able to adapt to. So I think that when the questioning child asks, and in the same way this man asked Amir al-Mu'mineen says, then look on, questioner, be confined to those of his attributes which the Quran had described. That means that we have to confine ourselves. We're confining ourselves to those of his attributes. Therefore, we see that his attributes are unlimited. We say 99 names. We say 99 names of Allah in many sects of Islam. I was talking, to somebody from another sect of Islam that I introduced or rather he himself came upon Du'ai Joshin Kabir, and he was saying that 10,000, 1,000 names, this is incredible. So is there a 99? Is there 1,000? Is there 10,000? It's not limited because he is unlimited. Not that we can understand that, but he has explained some of his attributes through the Quran. So therefore, it is those attributes which we focus on. So what we need to do when it comes to the sifat of Allah, the attributes and qualities and characteristics, which are manifested by his names, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى, and therefore, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Qahhar, Al-Jabbar, all of these things, Al-Khaliq, Al-Razik, and so on, all of them are names that we have been told. So yes, we can think about those. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, confine yourself to those and seek light from the effulgence of its guidance. Therefore, in those attributes is nur, and in that nur is hidayah. So focusing on and thinking about the names of Allah is something that is being encouraged here. Leave to Allah that knowledge which Satan has prompted you to seek. So now Amir al-Mu'mineen reveals a secret to us. He tells us that Shaitan is also going to misguide us by causing us to seek that which is outside of the Quran and outside of the confines of our knowledge. And sometimes we see that people become very bold when their knowledge and their marifa starts to increase, and it's something that we must constantly struggle against and prevent. Even one as limited in their knowledge and marifa and understanding and iman like me would need to guard myself all the time to make sure that I don't start to draw conclusions about what has been about Allah, and which is other than that which he has told me or his representatives have told us. Therefore, when that happens, we see that one starts going towards other extremes. In some places and situations, it's been called, for example, nusariyat. In some situations, it's been called shirk, because we see that now we are attaching things to Allah which should not be attached. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is guiding with caution. In this day and age, it should be easy to understand that caution. We see many scientists who approach science with honesty having that caution. The honest scientist will admit what they know and what they don't know. They will only draw conclusions from the evidence that is presented. And in that, they are willing to admit that there's many things that they still need to learn. There's many things that are hypotheses that may change. And we have to be even more careful. So the scientific approach and methodology is one of caution and care, but we too need to be even more careful than that. And just because the evidence is not that which science seeks, which is the evidence of the five senses and conclusions drawn in our intellect from the five senses, here we see that our base of knowledge is the Holy Quran and the sayings of the Ma'asumeen salatu wassalamu alayhim. And therefore, when we are looking at that, we have our knowledge base, but we have to be very careful in seeking exactly what is being said and understanding it, and through that gaining knowledge. When we start to attach our own ideas to everything, that's where we may be misguided. Now what we are in danger of is we are in danger of creating our own Allah. This is something that we are capable of doing because of our own faculty of imagination, which he has bestowed upon us. Therefore, the caution that is needed is so important. And to realize that you are so powerful that you can easily create your own Allah in your mind. It is something that we must constantly guard ourselves against. Because the moment that we do that, the moment that we attribute something to Allah which should not be attributed, the moment that we start thinking about him in a way that we should not be thinking, now we have been led astray. Now we are off the path. And that is something that Iblis is constantly trying to do. So that is something that he will want us to be led astray about, because he himself made that mistake. Iblis never worshipped Allah. Iblis was worshiping the Allah that he had created with his own mind. Because if he had been worshiping Allah, he would have known that Allah is the one who sends the hujjah. Allah is the one who has a representative, and he best knows who that representative should be. And when Iblis saw that he and the other angels, he being a jinn and the other angels, were asked to do sajda, prostration to Allah, that is when he realized that Allah has said, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa, and he is going to make a khalifa. And that was something that Iblis had imagined himself to be at the position of. And that is why he said, I am better than him. He did not say this, but in his acknowledgement of his wrong thinking that I think I am better than him, by doing that, he is also acknowledging that he should be the one who should be Khalifa. And it was something that was acknowledged by the angels as well. The angels said that we are praising you, and we are worshiping you, and we should be the ones. So the angels were forgiven, but Iblis was not. And the angels were forgiven because even though they gave that claim, when Allah at the end of it commanded them to pay that allegiance and obedience to his Khalifa, to his Hujjah, they did. And they sought forgiveness for what they had said earlier. And it's after 7,000 years of doing tawaf of the Baitul Ma'mur, they were forgiven. And so we see that Iblis was obstinate and he refused even then. And then he was removed from the Arsh. And then we see that because of that, Iblis now also wants us to do the same. So he is constantly trying to get us to create our own Allah. And we do that, how? By not being confined to the attributes. So leave to Allah that knowledge. So there is knowledge. There are things that are not being answered right now. And they're not being answered for various reasons. The degree at which knowledge is introduced to a human being is very important. And in school, we learn that the level of knowledge that is introduced is based upon the child's mental capacity. And when we try to teach a child that is in kindergarten, maybe a lecture on thermodynamics, on the laws of motion, then of course it would not only be, it would be futile. Not only would it be futile, it would confuse the child. Not only would it confuse the child, it may cause the child to not want to go to the class. It may cause the child to rebel against any form of knowledge being put upon them. And so there is such a degree of difference between people. Even when we reach adulthood, we have different types of knowledge and not everyone is the same. So for Allah in His infinite wisdom to know how much knowledge is going to be given, the gaining of knowledge is an infinite process. It requires eternity. That is why we see Jannah is a place where it can continue, but it would never end because knowledge is infinite, because Allah is infinite. Therefore, how much He gives us and as He gives it to us is something that we see around us. He is in control. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Therefore, nothing is happening out of coincidence. We look at our lives and how we progress. We look at our lives and how we ask questions. The questions arise based upon our thinking. Our thinking is based upon our knowledge. Therefore, as we gain, we see sometimes questions arise in our mind and we don't know the answers to them. And that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the answers. Ask and you will receive. So yes, when we ask, there is someone answering those questions. Our Imam al-Qaim Ajjallahu Farajahum, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, is such who is answering those questions, but they will be answered to you through many, many avenues. So as you seek the questions, there is one to answer. Just because your Imam is not before you does not mean you will not get answers to your questions. That would be like saying, because Allah is not before me, I will not get answers to my questions. I'm not saying the Imam is Allah, but I'm saying that they are both in ghaiba. So he represents his ghaibat. That means there is many connections between how Allah is ghaib and how your Imam has been taken into ghaibat. But the idea of your Imam being in ghaibat and not able to sustain you, protect you, nourish you, guide you, is an accusation not against the Imam, but an accusation against Allah. So if Allah is ghaib, He can do these things, can He not have a hujjah who is also ghaib and do these things? Most certainly He can. That is why ghaibat came much later. It came at a time when now humanity, our knowledge, our means, our understanding of the universe had reached a point where we would have the collective human intellectual maturity to achieve that. So that's why now we see in Ghaiba those questions are answered. How many of you go to a majlis and the person who is speaking, the speaker says something and you get an answer to a question you had? But first we must have the question and we must direct it towards our Imam. So he is the source. And sometimes we pick up a book and we turn to a page and suddenly it strikes us that this was a question that was in my mind. So the more earnest we are in our questions, you know, my young ones, always ask your questions to your Imam. Your Imam says, when you put your head on your pillow, speak to me. That is the time. So when you put your head on your pillow at the end, then all the questions that are in your mind, ask him and then sleep. And you will see that at some point, somewhere, they will be answered. But they will be answered because now is the time for you to know them. And the time for us to know us is based on our level of understanding. So it is a constant process. And to guide and nourish the intellects of billions of creations throughout the universes is something that is magnanimous and incomprehensible in its complexity and perfection. But Allah is slowly taking us all in that direction. So leave to Him the knowledge which Satan has prompted you to seek, and which neither the Quran enjoins you to seek, nor is there any trace of it in the actions or sayings of the Prophet or other leaders. And that tells us that again here, which is the Quran has not mentioned it, nor do we see a trace of it in the actions or the sayings of the Ma'sumin, of the Anbiya and the Ma'sumin, the holiest messenger sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. That is very important. And we see that many people, though they love the Masumeen, though they want to practice the religion, start coming up with new ideas, start saying things that go completely against the sayings of the Masumeen. Like, for example, there might be those who are lovers of the Ahlul Bayt and have chosen to disregard Salat and have said that Salat is, this is not theoretical, this is something that I have heard and seen, and I'm sure you all have as well, that this is something that is, not for us. They'll have many reasons for it, which of course not important to go into. However, what we have done here is we have gone against the actions and the sayings of the Masumeen. Apparently it is out of, in appearance, it seems to be out of love and ma'rifah. However, if we are not following this dictate of that whom we love, who is telling us that if there is no trace of it in our actions, like if at any point any Masum or the holiest messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, had said that you can disregard Salat, you don't have to pray Salat. Once you reach a certain level of love for us, now it is beyond you, you don't have to. That would be, if anyone, because of their status of ma'rifah and their love of Allah, was such that they would not have to pray, then it would be none other than the 14 Masumeen. The holiest messenger would not have. So in these, and there's many other examples. So not to make a commentary on our current, society and our current thoughts and what we're going through and the extremes that we've seen and the branching and the firqa, but at the same time, just saying that and many other situations can lead us to do things. So the questioning is there. The questioning is important, but our questions should be, and especially this is directed to my young ones, my elders, they know better than me. Our questions should be, for example, is this seen in the actions or sayings of the Masumeen? Is this seen in any part of the Quran? If it is not, then it is something that we have made ourselves. This is also telling us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put everything that is needed for us in the Quran and in the actions and the sayings of the Masumeen. Nothing will be outside of this. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. On this day, I have perfected for you your religion. I have completed their religion. So the religion was completed. And we see that it continued in the form of the A'immah. Therefore, there is nothing that we need that is not written already, that has not been said by them. To suggest that it has been lost over time is true historically, but it's also to suggest that it's nowhere present is an accusation against Allah. And the idea that Amir al-Mu'mineen is not correct over here, because he is telling us that you must see it in our actions and sayings or in the Quran. This is the extreme limit of Allah's claim upon you. So therefore it is we are obligated to follow based upon what has been written in the Quran and what has been seen in the actions or heard in the sayings of the Ma'sumin as-salatu was-salamu alayhi. Know that firm in knowledge are those. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying these people are firm in knowledge. So therefore, the idea of seeking some knowledge, not seeking that which we are not sure about, nor are there answers for right now, Amir al-Mu'mineen is calling that firm in knowledge. So therefore, in our ilm, we have a certain level of strength when we refrain from opening curtains that lie against the unknown. So that means we ask questions and we look inside and we do not see the answer in the Quran or the sayings and actions of the Masumeen, but we continue through our intellect to surmise it. We decide that based upon what we already know from the Quran and our level of ma'rifah, now we are able to draw other conclusions. So we open the curtain, and in answering those conclusions, we are going to a place that is unknown. So from opening the curtains that lie up against the unknown. And in that situation, we see that their acknowledgement of ignorance about the details of the hidden unknown prevents them, and it prevents them from further probe. So that is such a beautiful limitation that Amir al-Mu'mineen is putting upon us, but at the same time saying that this is what we call firm in knowledge. And sometimes we hear the sayings of the Masumeen as-salatu was-salamu alayhi, in which in those sayings we perhaps are not sure what is being said, but we draw our own conclusion. We say that they said this because of that. They said this. And many things that Amir al-Mu'mineen has said are written in books now, but they were said to people who had a different level of knowledge. Who is to understand the level of knowledge of Hazrat Salman? Who is to understand the level of knowledge of Abu Zar and Ammar Yasir? Who is to understand that? And when it is being said to them something and it appears in the books and we see it, then we start to think that now we will draw our own conclusions from it, and we may be very incorrect. So therefore, saying that this is something I am not sure about, this is something that I will pray to Allah to guide me about, to increase my knowledge in, this is what is firm. They do not. And Allah praises them for their admission that they are unable to get knowledge not allowed to them. Allahu Akbar. That is just incredible. We are the ones who praise Allah, but Allah is praising those who seek knowledge, but admitting that this is something I cannot understand. If you think about it, that is such a good deterrent from the things I see around us today and people drawing conclusions so many times of things they don't understand. Allah is praising you for saying, I don't understand. This is not something that is known to me. So therefore, when we don't know the answer to a question, that is the best thing to admit. They do not go deep into the discussion of what is not enjoined upon them about knowing Him, and they call it firmness. Be content with this and do not limit the greatness of Allah. Allahu Akbar. So there needs to be a certain level of contentment, and that is the sukoon of the qalb. In realizing that we are ignorant, but knowing that we are seeking knowledge, and Allah is praising us for realizing our limitations, then what more would be needed to be content, to realize that Allah has praised you because you did not draw conclusions about Allah that were not within your grasp. Be content with this and do not limit the greatness of Allah after the measure of your own intelligence. And therefore the greatness of Allah is not such that we can measure with our mind. So we simply say, Allahu Akbar. He is indeed the greatest. And in that greatness, we admit that we do not know how great you are. You are the greatest, but we do not know how great that is. And that is something that is praiseworthy. So while you are praising Allah, He is praising you. And what a beautiful relationship that is. Or else you will be among the destroyed ones. And indeed, we see the destroyed ones. The destroyed ones were those that were present in Medina at the time when him, regarding whom the holiest prophet said, Inna al-Husaynu misba'ul huda wa safinatun nijat. Indeed, Hussein is the light of guidance and the ark of salvation. Safinatun nijat. And how blessed are we that on this day we are able to commemorate and celebrate his coming into the world, whom Allah sent. Allahu Akbar. I see that from a hadith that when Allah wanted the world to know His mercy and His love, He sent the holiest messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Allah wanted to know, when Allah wanted the universe to know His might and glory, He sent Amir al-Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi. When Allah wanted the universe to know His honor, His respect, His dignity, His ismat, His izzat, He sent Bibi Zahra salamullah alayha. When Allah wanted the world, the universe to know the beauty that is within, He sent Imam Hassan salatu wassalamu alayhi. And when Allah wanted the universe to know what is His, how He is a savior of all, a savior, and how He is the shafi of all. He is the markaz of shifa'at. When He wanted those to know His level of forgiveness, He sends Imam Hussein the one who is called the Safinatul Nijat. And his Safina was one that left Medina. And it left Medina. When it left Medina, It left Medina as an ark of salvation. And many had boarded it, but many left as well. And in the end, in Karbala, we see the Safina was 72 people in the family of the holiest Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And when we look at that Safina, we realize that it is still here today. Imam Hussein in his magnificence, we see that he is showing the ishq of Allah. Allah created the universe out of hub. إِنِّي مَا خَلَقْتُ السَّمَاءَ مَبْنِيَةً وَالْأَرْضَ مَبْنِيَّةً and so on. إِلَّا فِي مَحَبَّةِ هَؤُلَاءِ الْخَمْسَةِ الَّذِينَ. So that the universe was created out of hub. Above hub is a level of mawadda. Above mawadda is a level of ishq. And so therefore, when he created out of hub. When he sent his messengers and he sent his ma'sumin, he demanded mawadda. And he said, now you shall. And mawadda is hub, but it is with ma'rifat. And therefore we have to understand them. But there is a level above mawadda, and that level above mawadda is a level of ishq. And that is where, when you love somebody out of hub, it may be because of personal reasons and something you are gaining from them. When you love somebody out of mawadda, it is with ma'rifah, because you understand their status and how great they are, you love them. That is mawadda. It is not a selfish love now. It is a love of understanding. Hub can be selfish, but when it comes to ishq, ishq is where one disregards oneself completely and completely dedicates oneself to that whom he is in with ishq, whom he is with extreme love. And this is the level of fana. When one is in hub, then one gains benefits from the other. When one is in mawadda, then one is praising, admiring, and learning about the other. When one is in ishq, then one is sacrificing oneself completely to the other. And none other did that like Hussein did. This was the level of ishq. Therefore, when Allah wanted the universe to understand that hub and mawadda is a level that is in sharia, that is in a level in action, that is in a level in the laws and what is written, ishq is far above this. And Allah's ishq was manifested through Imam Hussein. And therefore we see in that love. That is why when the Lawh Mahfuz said that the Rahib will not have any children, that was the universe that was created out of hub. That was in the laws and realms of hub. Sharia is limited to the laws and realms of hub and mawadda. In ishq, Sharia is left far behind. Do not measure the matam of Imam Hussein in the laws of Sharia, because matam of Imam Hussein and anything that goes to him is ishq. And that is why you see that when Allah said, Allahu Akbar, when Imam Hussein said, no, give him 7 sons, give him 7 sons, in that we see that these 7 sons that were given were not written. That shows us how ishq superseded hub. And Allah's ishq, Imam Hussein's ishq superseded hub. When we see the holiest prophet in salat, and in salat he is in sajda, and he is praying to Allah. At that time we see ishq comes upon salat. Salat is in the boundaries of Sharia. Salat is hub. But ishq coming upon it now tells us that this supersedes all. And therefore those who came to Imam Hussein and sacrificed themselves for him were at that level. And none was more than that than Hazrat Abbas. Hazrat Abbas manifested the ishq for Imam Hussein. The Safinatul Nijat is such that we see it leaves Medina. But when it left Medina with a certain group of people, but it did not stop in Karbala. The Safina continued, and the Safina went on. Now, the Safina of Nuh is explained in the Quran in many ways for this reason too, so that we can understand the ultimate Safina, which is the Safina of Imam Hussein. All the stories in the Quran in every way will relate to the Masumina Salatu Wasalam, the 14. And what is explained and chosen out of the many prophets who came, and the select few that were chosen and their stories were chosen to be put in the Quran, were because they did in some way explain the Masumin, which allowed to explain Allah. So therefore, when we look at the Safina of Imam Hussein, look at the Safina of Nuh. The Safina of Nuh was such that there was a flood, and this water that was everywhere destroyed everything, and only those who were saved were upon the Safina. In the same way, there was a flood of munafiqat, a flood of shirk, a flood of kufr in the land around. And Imam Hussein was taking this boat to show that this is the ark of salvation and you must come upon it if you want to be saved from the darkness that is around you. That darkness is not gone away. It is magnified today. So therefore, we see that there is a certain safina that is over here as well. And this safina that is over here is the one that is Imam Hussein. And when we look at the safina of Nuh, it was not created until there were 3 generations of trees that were used to make it. And in the same way, you will see 3 generations coming here as well. The generation of the Holy Prophet and then his daughter. And then in the 3rd generation, we see Imam Hussein. So those trees that were used to build the Safina of Nuh, they are representing the generations of the Panjatan that have come to represent that. The idea that whoever boarded the salvation of the ark was such that they were saved is the same over here. Is today the Safina still valid? Is it still occurring amongst us, the Safina of Imam Hussein? Most certainly it is. Every Imam Balagha is part of that Safina. Every Farsh Azza is part of that Safina. Everyone who is going for ziyarat is riding upon the Safina. Everyone who goes to Karbala for Arba'in Ashura and otherwise is riding upon the Safina. Every time we listen to a Noha, every time we do Matam, every time we do So Salam Marsiya, and we attend Majalis, anything we are doing in that regards that links to Karbala is our link to that Safina. So therefore, we must continue in our pursuit of the Azadari of Imam Hussein, for he was sent as the Safinatul Nijat. I will pause over here. As-salatu wassalam. Alayhi wa alayhim ajma'in.
Jazakallah Maulana, and thanks all the participants. And Jazakallah Maulana, आपका enlightened lecture and इमाम हुसैन के बारे में आप जो रोशनी डाले हैं, उनके नजात का रास्ता है हमें, और उससे हटके और कोई जगह पे आपको सही रास्ता मिल नहीं सकता है. तो जज़ाकल्लाह, आपके सेहत में और आपके खानदान वाले और जो भी बुजुर्ग हैं इंशाल्लाह. और अभी एक कमेंट आया है, खतीजा हमारी कज़न पाकिस्तान से, माशाल्लाह से, अगर कोई पार्टिसिपेट करके कोई सवाल जवाब और मौलाना के कोई कमेंट्स देना चाह रहे हैं खतीजा, तो आप जो है you could give, and if there is any खसीदा, अली अब्बा साहब तो चले गए, वो शायद. और
सॉरी मुस्तफा भाई, आपको मैं इंटरप्ट कर रहा था, बस एक क्विक मारूजा कर लूं. एक इल्तिमास है सूरह फातिहा और 3 खुल की आज के स्पॉन्सर के मरहुमीन के इसाले सवाब के सिलसिले में जनाब अस्करी जाफरी, सैयद मुस्तफा अली मूसवी, कासिम उन्निसा बेगम, सैयद मोहम्मद हादी जाफरी, तखिया बेगम, नसरीन बेगम, मासूमा बेगम, एजाज अली, सैयदा मखीदा, सैयदा मशहदी, मखीदा करबलाई और जुमला मोमिनीन और मोमिनात की अरवाह के लिए.
जी जरूर. हम जी खंबर जाफरी जो टेक्सास के हैं डॉक्टर, उन्होंने जो है उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं कि आज इमाम हुसैन के बारे में उन्होंने कुछ कसीदा सुनाए. और हम जी खंबर भाई आ जाइए आप.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम मोमिन मोमिनात, एक जोश मारे के साथ नारे सलावत. जश्न शब्बीर घर घर हो धूम धूम के, आज जहरा के अतराफ घूम घूम के, तहनियत दीजिए पाँव चूम चूम के, भेजो सलवात पुरजोश झूम झूम के. सलवात
मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद.
گود میں فاطمہ کے ہے پیارا حسین، نور معراج احمد کا تارا حسین، رب کا پیارا ہمارا ہمارا حسین، رب کا پیارا ہمارا ہمارا حسین، دین اللہ کا ہے سہارا حسین۔ صلوات
اللہم صلی اللہ۔
کہہ رہا ہے یہ ایمان ہمارا حسین، جھوم کر بولے سلمان ہمارا حسین، کہتے ہیں کل رسولاں ہمارا حسین، کہتے ہیں کل رسولاں ہمارا حسین، بولی مہر سلیمان ہمارا حسین، جشن شبیر گھر گھر ہو دھوم دھوم کے، آج زہرا کے اطراف گھوم گھوم کے، کہہ رہی ہے شجاعت ہمارا حسین، بولی بڑھ کر سخاوت ہمارا حسین، کہہ رہی ہے عدالت ہمارا حسین، کہہ رہی ہے عدالت ہمارا حسین، بولا حسن عبادت ہمارا حسین، علم کا ہے تقاضا ہمارا حسین، حلم کا ہے یہ دعویٰ ہمارا حسین، عقل نے بھی سنایا ہمارا حسین، عقل نے بھی سنایا ہمارا حسین، نور حق بڑھ کے بولا ہمارا حسین، کہہ رہی ہے یہ خلقت ہمارا حسین، ہے یہ کلمہ نبوت ہمارا حسین، بولا ناز شفاعت ہمارا حسین، کہہ رہی ہے ولایت ہمارا حسین، جوش کوثر پکارا ہمارا حسین، خلد کہتا ہے پیارا ہمارا حسین، عرش بولا ہمارا ہمارا حسین، عرش بولا ہمارا ہمارا حسین، ہے سخاہم کا نعرہ ہمارا حسین، امامت کا ہے نعرہ ہمارا حسین، بولی تطہیر کیا کیا ہمارا حسین، خلقفا کا ہے کہنا ہمارا حسین، کھل کے قرآن بولا ہمارا حسین، بولی خاتون محشر ہمارا حسین، سن کے کہتے ہیں حیدر ہمارا حسین، بڑھ کے بولے پیمبر ہمارا حسین، آئیے وہی داور ہمارا حسین، بولو سب مل کے امام انعام، بولو سب مل کے انعام دو یا علی، حاجتیں سب کی برلائے یا نبی، آج پایا پسر شہ نے کیسا سخی، اہل ایمان کا ہے آج نعرہ یہی، بولو سب مل جشن شبیر گھر گھر ہو دھوم دھوم کے، آج زہرا کے اطراف گھوم گھوم کے، تہنیت دیجئے پاؤں چوم چوم کے، भेजो सलवात पुरजोश झूम झूम के सलवा
माशाल्लाह, सुभान अल्लाह। कमर भाई, आप जो है जबरदस्त, ऐसा करें कि पहले से तैयारी करके आ चुके थे आप इसके लिए। चलिए, आपको अच्छा मौका मिला, और हम सबके पार्टिसिपेंट्स के वालिदैन और बिलखुसूस जो महरूमीन हो चुके हैं उनके लिए जो है एक सूरह फातिहा और
एक सूरह फातिहा शोहदाए पेशावर, और आप सकीना आपा की मेहनत का सलीखा है ये, क्योंकि मैं आउट ऑफ टाउन हूँ, मगर ऑनलाइन बुक्स फॉर शिया children.com में मिल गई मुझे।
जी जी, उनके लिए दुआ करें, और आपके वालिदैन के लिए भी एक सूरह फातिहा सैयद नूरुल हसन जाफरी और सबिया जाफरी के लिए, और जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उनके लिए एक फातिहा, और उसके बाद हम जो है अम्मा युजीबुल मौलाना के नेक जबान से और खास खुलूस से वो पढ़ा के आज का सेशन खत्म कर देंगे इंशाल्लाह। बिस्मिल्लाह। अल्लाह अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन। किसी को कोई सवाल पूछना है मौलाना से, कुछ सजेशंस पार्टिसिपेंट्स? जी मौलाना, दुआ पढ़ा दीजिए। बिस्मिल्लाह।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। मारे लहा या रब्बी या रब, उस सफीनतुन निजात के सदक़े में, उस मिसबाहुल खुदा के सदक़े में, उस शाफ़े महशर के सदक़े में, उस शहंशाह करबला के सदक़े में, वो जिसने फितरस को बाल पर अता किए, वो जिसने राहिब को 7 बेटे अता किया, वो जिसने कायनात को निजात और शिफात अता की, उस हुसैन के सदक़े में जो परेशान हाल है उनकी परेशानियों को दूर करना फरमा। जो बीमार है, जो इनकी सेहत जिस हिसाब से भी जहाँ भी जैसे हैं, जो बीमार है उन सब की मुकम्मल शिफायाबी फरमा।
इलाही अमीन। आइए
इस दुआ के लिए 5 दफ़ा अम्मा युजीबु की तिलावत करते हैं। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अम्मा युजीबुल मुत्तर्रा इज़ा दआहु व यक्शिफु सु'अ, 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 या अरहमर राहिमीन बिहक़्क़ि मुहम्मदिन व आलिहि त्ताहिरीन, अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद।
इंशाल्लाह नेक्स्ट संडे आप सब लोगों से मिलेंगे, जब तक हम सब दुआ गो हैं पार्टिसिपेंट्स। जज़ाकल्लाह मौलाना।
जज़ाकल्लाह।
खुदा हाफिज।